Welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Tuesday morning at 36 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. When we do come to you live from the streets of Kampala, Uganda. I want to say thank you so much to all of you that were part of last night's broadcast. We did come late, more than 40 minutes late, but you still waited for us and got things underway with us. So we do appreciate that. We do not take that love and support for granted. So thank you so much for those of you that managed to dedicate your time to be with us. For those of you that did not make it, we can always do better next time. Do not worry. So but yes, we are back at it once again. And this morning we'll be discussing that Manchester United victory over Wolverhampton Wanderers, in which they won by 4-1. Could have been many more. They could have easily won that one 7-1 or something like that. I made it. Good morning, Pedri. How are you doing? How is your beautiful morning? So then we'll also get to discuss the UEFA Champions League. It does return tonight, and there's plenty of action, including and the kickoffs. But it does promise to be a very, very entertaining, piece of action coming your way. So really, very good, Pedri. How are you doing? He says he's very good. That's quite fulfilling to know that you're doing good. Okay. Just need us to update our headline before we get into the thick of the conversation, because I'm sure Manchester United fans can't wait for us any longer to get into the thick of it, because it's that Monday night football where you live with happy faces. But like we had predicted on here, we had predicted for them to win by 2-1. Fortunately, they made it even better by winning 4-1. Wolves have been so poor this season, and it's not surprising that they lost by that margin of scoreline. However, even when you have been poor all season, sometimes we give them the benefit of that maybe today is the day they fight on better. Not fight on better to and win, but at least fight on better not to lose with a big margin. Unfortunately for them, that still wasn't the case. And they've made changes to their managerial capacity or hierarchy, and it's still not paid off the desired results that they would have wanted. And they have to find, I don't know, a way to fight on, but it's not looking pretty. Like I said, in the game itself, Man United could have scored more. They had an opportunity for Diego Dalot, and I think the other was for was it Brian Mbomo? Before they go 1-0 up, they eventually get to 1-0 up with Cunha providing the assist for Bruno Fernandes, for whom Sam Johnston will be really, really disappointed in himself, the way he handled that situation, because I felt that he could have saved the moment. He could have literally made that save, but unfortunately for him, it did not happen. And then there's a moment still when it is 1-0, they could have gone 2-0 up through Matthias Cunha, but there was a goal line clearance after Sam Johnson had been beaten. So they managed to stay in the game until the 47th minute of the game. That's 2 minutes of stoppage time in the first half for them to concede what was the equalizer going into halftime. And even though it was 1-1 at halftime, this is not a game that I did watch because of reasons that I explained last night, So, but I managed to catch the highlights, like I promised you prior to this podcast, among a few other things, or snippets from that game. But the entirety of the game I did not watch. So, but when you assess the game and you look at the statistics, you sort of felt that Man United were bound to find a way through, because Wolves were that poor already. Because at the end of the day, Man United had a total of 27 shots on goal, with 10 of those coming on target. In the second stanza, again, Brandon Mbomo had a missed opportunity before scoring, again, with Diego Dalot providing the assist to make it 2-1. Then later on, it was Mason Mount with Bruno Fernandes providing that assist, and eventually they win a penalty in the 82nd minute, which Bruno Fernandes steps up and converts from the spot for a handball in the area. There had been a similar appeal earlier on in that game, but that one wasn't given. So this one, the referee again was summoned to the monitor to review the incident, and he decided that it was a deliberate handball, so a penalty needed to be given. But United dominated all the affairs of the game. Like I said, 27 shots on goal compared to Wolves' 8, only 2 of them going on target. They had an XG of 4.2. That's how terrible Wolves were, and possibly that could be the highest we've seen all season in terms of XG. They had overall ball possession of 63% compared to 37% for Wolverhampton Wanderers. In terms of corners, it was 9-1. Big chances, 4-1. Every statistic that really mattered in the game was in favor of Manchester United. And that dominant performance tells you I do not think it tells us how good Manchester United are, but it tells us how poor Wolves are. However, on the other side, it tells us the capability that United have in creating these chances, and if they can put them away, then they could always go on to have a good day in office. So, by terms of implications, the victory for Man United meant that they moved as 6th on the Premier League log with 25 points, equivalent to Chelsea. Now, here's what is going to happen, or what is going to come up in a few days. You remember in the aftermath of that 1-1 draw between Chelsea and Arsenal, when we were on this podcast and sat here and convinced the rest of the world that Chelsea were officially title contenders, that there was no way of hiding from it. Now, I know people will be wondering, now that after 15 games, Chelsea and Manchester United have an equivalent number of points, with Chelsea only ahead of Man United on a 6 plus more goal difference. Does that mean that Manchester United are title contenders? Are they in the title conversation? Here's what I will say. Mathematically, they are in it. But if you're being realistic to yourself, you'll know that Manchester United are not in it at the moment. And when I say at the moment, it's not to say that things can't change. When you look at the Premier League table, it's too fluid. It's neck on neck. There's no huge disparities in terms of points. I'll give you an example. That the teams between 8th and 10th place all have 23 points. That's only 10 points off of the top of the table. That's how close it is. And we're talking about the teams that are 8th, 9th, and 10th. That's Brighton, Sunderland, and Liverpool with 23 points each. Now, to bring it further into context, there's only 5 points. Manchester United have only 1 point out of the top 4. 1 point, because Crystal Palace occupies 4th place. So Man United and Chelsea are 1 point away from the top 4. So if you're 1 point away from the top 4, Crystal Palace, who occupy 4th, are only 7 points behind Arsenal. And Aston Villa, the resurgence of Aston Villa is evidence that you can bounce back and be in this title conversation. They've only lost 3 games this season. That's as many as Crystal Palace have lost. Aston Villa, we know that they were winless in their opening 4 games, and they've not looked back since then. What they've done is go on to win 9 games out of the last 10, really losing only to Liverpool. So that tells you that if you can be consistent, then it is there for the taking. And I do not think the title conversation is going to change that much, given, yes, teams eventually, one or 3 teams could break away, but this season has not been an indicator of that. It's not been any indicator that at one point we're going to see teams break away. The gap is really, really close. And it's not just close within the top 10. It's also the same story almost within the other half of the table. That when you look at overall point differences between sections of the table. So, for example, in this particular case, you're looking at the top four, you're looking at sixth place and a seventh place. It's only 2 points that separate Crystal Palace from fifth, sixth, and seventh team. That's Everton. Only 2 points. So you win a game or two, and the other, your opponents falter, and suddenly you're up there in the table. I'll give you an example. For example, if Everton were to win their next 2 games, we'll be having a very different conversation about them. And yet, it's not that they've done anything outstanding so far this season. They have 7 wins out of 15 games. They have 3 draws and 5 losses. So that's how close it is. And for Man United, when you look over the last 5 games, they've drawn 2, they've won 2. And that loss, which came against Everton, now feels even bigger. Because had they not lost that game, we would be talking about Man United maybe being at 28 points. And that would be enough for them to be in top 4. So I, for one, my prediction at the start of the season was that they will finish 7th eventually. And I remember putting them 7th, I think, even ahead of Tottenham Hotspur. As we speak, Tottenham Hotspur are 11th of the Premier League table. We can only wait to see what time will deliver. But that's the impression at the Premier League table. 2 points separate Arsenal from Man City, who are second. 3 points separate Arsenal from the third team. That's Aston Villa. That's how small a gap it is. 2 points, 1 point, like that. So anything can happen. The jury is still out there. But anyways, we won't dwell much on what that is or what there is in that. We'll leave that discussion at that as far as the Premier League is concerned, and I drift away to the UEFA Champions League because things are happening in the UEFA Champions League. Things are happening tonight. Bayern Munich is one of those games that will come in the earlier kickoffs. So be keen on not missing out on that action if you can access it. But here's the run of fixtures as far as match day 6 is concerned. Today, that's at Tuesday, the 9th of December. Kairat Almaty will be up against Olympiacos at 6:30 p.m., while at 8:45 p.m., Bayern Munich will take on Sporting CP. Atlanta at 11 p.m., Atlanta will be at home against Chelsea. Monaco will take on Galatasaray. Union Saint-Gilloise will be up against Olympique Marseille. PSV will entertain Atletico de Madrid, while Barcelona will be up against Eintracht Frankfurt. That's at Camp Nou. And then Inter Milan will take on Liverpool. Tottenham Hotspur will be up against Slavia Praha. That's the run of fixtures in as far as Tuesday is concerned. Come Wednesday, Villarreal will be up against Copenhagen, as well as Karabakh up at home against Ajax, and those 2 games will kick off at 8:45 p.m. And then in the 11 p.m. Kickoffs, you'll have Bayer Leverkusen at home against Newcastle. Real Madrid will entertain Manchester City at the Santiago Bernabeu, while Benfica will play at home against Napoli. Club Brugge will entertain Arsenal, while Athletic Bilbao will be at home against PSG. Juventus will be at home to Paphos, will be at home against Paphos, while Borussia Dortmund will wait for Bodo Glimt at the Sigino Iduna Park. Excuse me. So that's a match day 6. And when match day 6 is complete, I will have sort of a Champions League break, or we'll have a break away from the UEFA Champions League for a period of almost, I think, close on a month, because it won't return for match day 7 until the 20th of January. That's when you should expect UEFA Champions League action to return for us to be able to go ahead and see out the rest of the league or group fixtures in as far as this campaign is concerned. But to get into the thick of it, I think for us, there's one place to start, and that's the game between Inter Milan and Liverpool. We are talking about last season's losing finalists alongside a team who crashed out at the round of 16 at the hands of PSG. Of course, Inter Milan being beaten by the same PSG side, I think by 5-1. Was it 5-1 or 5-0 in that game? Really. So, unfortunately for Liverpool, or fortunately, depending on which way you want to look at it, but I would want to believe it's more to the former, that it's unfortunate that the game does come at a time when one of Liverpool's star players in Mo Salah finds himself in disarray with the club. We know that he did that explosive interview after their 3-3 draw against Leeds United over the weekend, and since then he's been the topic of discussion. Speaking of being the topic of discussion, yesterday, as would have been expected, as Mo Salah himself expected, I don't know if you do remember, sometime again last season, there was a picture that was shared, and in that frame, there was a Trent Alexander-Arnold, there was Mo Salah himself, and there was Virgil van Dijk. At the time, remember the conversation was that all three players were set to run out of contracts at the end of the season, and eventually Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk renewed, and Alexander Trent-Arnold, did not renew, so he ended up leaving the club, switching sides or allegiances to Real Madrid. And Yemi Carragher was shown that picture and asked to react to it. And he decided to give Virgil van Dijk his flowers. That was his prerogative, and rightly so, perhaps. He sort of seemed to ignore Alexander Trent-Arnold and Mo Salah. And I remember, he did not ignore Mo Salah entirely because he did speak about him. And in response to that clip, Mo Salah went and quoted that tweet and said, and was wondering whether Yemi Carragher is obsessed with him. Now, the reason as to why I make reference back to that conversation or to that interview is because of what happened yesterday. Yemi Carragher spoke for 8 minutes uninterrupted about Mohamed Salah. Now one will be wondering, what's 8 minutes when you guys get on here and speak almost for 40 minutes about a particular team? Well, you'll get to know why. But the other one is on TV, so TV is a bit different. So he said about Mo Salah, he said, I think the other two, Mo Salah and Trent-Arnold, could take a leaf out of Virgil van Dijk's book. I do not know what kind of leaf he wanted them to take out of Virgil van Dijk's book, because they had yet to sign. Even he had yet to sign. But he decided to sing praises of Virgil van Dijk. And Mo Salah quoted that tweet from Sky Sports News and said, I'm starting to think you're obsessed with me. That's what that was Mo Salah's response. I'm starting to think you're obsessed with me. And again, he does himself no favors in reference when you go back to that tweet, because it came in January and we are only in December. So it's a space of almost 11 months. And yesterday, Yemi Carragher went on and on and on and on, raving about Mo Salah. He surely had plenty to say. Some of it valid, some of it, but you see, even when Yemi Carragher makes a valid argument, or even if you wanted to take his arguments as valid, he's still biased about Mohamed Salah that you almost do not want to respect his opinion about the player in a way. Even when he's praising him, he always has that but. You see, if somebody tells you you're beautiful or you're handsome, but that almost disqualifies what they say first, because But it's like saying, yeah, everything about you is positive, but these are the negatives. And no matter how the positives good are, this negative makes you that bad. So that's the context in which we are talking about. Now, for a player in Jamie Carragher, who made 768 appearances for Liverpool, scored 3 goals, and unfortunately for him, 7 own goals, and won 0 Premier League titles. In a way, he pretty much has a right of opinion, or he has a right to talk about Liverpool, perhaps more than many of us. As a former Liverpool player, he has that right, you know. But also, he has come under criticism before. There's a time he was speaking about winning Premier League titles, and Jose Mourinho said, Jamie Carragher shouldn't be talking about winning a Premier League title if he's never won it. He never won it. And that's a statement of fact. It's not a dig at him. It's just the truth. And him going on for 8 minutes, saying that until he came to Liverpool, he was looked at as the guy that failed at Chelsea, that he's a nobody at Egypt, and that because he's not won the AFCON before. I looked at that and I was thinking to myself, is Steven Gerrard a nobody at Liverpool because he did not win the Premier League title? Because he is the same man that sat in that chair still and made references to how great Steven Gerrard was and how they helped other players come into the club. He makes reference to this game against Eintracht Frankfurt for Mo Salah looking on to Alexander Isak, not helping Isak Florianovic to shine, to say, you're the guys that are to tell Florianovic, you're the guy taking this team forward, that it's coming to the end of the road for me. I don't know if that's bogus or it's an opinion I ought to respect, because when you're coming off back of a season that's arguably your best season in Liverpool colours, I don't think you're ready to hand over the real stick to somebody else, especially when you've signed a new contract that is worth 2 years. That's for starters. Him making the speculative opinion of how Mo Salah is not helping his teammates and others, I find that intellectual dishonesty, in my opinion. One, I do not think he knows everything that happens behind the Liverpool training ground. I do not think if you sat Liverpool players on a one-on-one interview, they would have similar views about Mohamed Salah, that he does not help other players. So this is the man that told the rest of the world that a couple of weeks ago that his legs are gone, that they're done. I do not want to believe so. Look at, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo. He left Manchester United as the star of that team, won the Ballon d'Or 2008, marched on to Real Madrid 2009-2010 season, was his debut campaign, I think. He then goes on to be the star at Real Madrid. He moves on to go to Juventus. He was the star of the team while he was there. He moves on to return to Manchester United. And as soon as he walked through those doors, Bruno Fernandes, who was the star of that team, his candle dimmed. And that of Cristiano Ronaldo shone brightest. Now, in one of the interviews, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did say that it was a mistake by Manchester United to bring back Cristiano Ronaldo. And I want to respect Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's perspective, because he looked at in a footballing sense or perspective entirely in relation to young players that he was trying to develop. I remember making the same argument, and I'll repeat it here. Man United resigning Cristiano Ronaldo was purely on the finance side of things for the club, the financial image, the brand, etc., etc. And it did pay off, by the way. And on the footballing perspective, Cristiano Ronaldo actually did okay until his relationship with Eric Ten Hag, which he said he did not respect him as a coach, and he did not think Ten Hag respected him enough. His relationship with him went sour. He did that equally explosive interview with Piers Morgan, and we know how things turned out. They ended up parting ways with Manchester United, and he moved on to Al Nassr. He went to Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League, and he's been the star of that team. He's 40 years old by now. So, handing over the mantle to a young generation has less to do with your age, but more with your mental state of mind in regards to how long you still have left in your tank. If Mohamed Salah is still convinced that he still has 4 good years at the top level in him, then handing over the mantle to Florian Wirtz is still premature in his opinion. But also, what has Florian Wirtz done to show that I'm ready to take that mantle on? Early signs have not pointed anywhere near that direction. If you and I sat in a conversation and asked, okay, if Mo Salah leaves the club, who do you think is going to be the standout player to carry Liverpool forward? I do not think Florian Wirtz would come in the first 3 options by measure of his own current performances or by measure of how things have gone for him so far in his debut campaign with Liverpool. You know, in any case, even Ekitike gets ahead of him. Then you look to that midfield for inspiration and elsewhere. So, Jamie Carragher revved, and I mean, it's like he had waited for this moment his entire life. Now, we know that in the aftermath of that interview that he did in the mixed zone, that's Mo Salah, he's been frozen out of the team. But he was excluded, at least, from the traveling contingent for for Liverpool that will be taking on Inter Milan in the UEFA Champions League. And Anna Slot was saying, when a player says such things about the club, you know, our decisions have to be made. And yeah, they made their decisions, whatever the case is. Whether this is the end of the road for Mo Salah at Liverpool, that remains to be seen. I for one wouldn't want it to be that. But Jamie Carragher, I mean, I don't want to use derogatory language, but that's disgraceful. You're a disgrace. And I'm not saying he should be jumping to Mo Salah's defense if he doesn't feel the need to do so, or if he doesn't feel that it would be the right view for him to jump to Mo Salah's, defense. But him going on and on of how Salah was a nobody until Liverpool signed him, well, I didn't know Liverpool was in the business of signing nobodies. Sometimes big teams sign players that are already backed. In other words, already backed products. Sometimes they get half-baked talent and better it. Is he trying to tell us that Liverpool splashed £116 million on a nobody in Florian Wirtz? Because when you look at the numbers of Florian Wirtz before joining to Liverpool, I do not think they are better than those of Mohamed Salah at AC Roma, where he had spent about 2 seasons prior to joining Liverpool. Actually, in his last season at AC Roma, the time when they were under the charges of Rudi Garcia, that was 2016-2017. He scored 15 goals in 31 appearances. Only goals. The previous campaign, in which he had made, I think, about 34 appearances, I think he had scored about 14 goals. He describes him as being known as the guy that failed at Chelsea. Given his age, having come from Switzerland at FC Basel, I do not want to think he failed at Chelsea. I'd want to think Chelsea failed him. And by the way, part of why Mourinho signed him was, you see, Mourinho was the kind of manager that would sign a player just so that the other teams do not have him. Not because he's really, really interested in using that player. So, KDB was failed at Chelsea. I do not want to think he failed at Chelsea. Some of the players that I would say failed at Chelsea, for me, Fernando Torres failed at Chelsea after joining from Liverpool in January 2011. When Claudio Pizarro joined Chelsea in 2007, I'd want to believe he failed at Chelsea. He was an already baked product. Things did not work out. Went out on loan to Werder Bremen, ended up being signed to Werder Bremen and resigned to Bayern Munich. Had a stellar career as far as the German Bundesliga is concerned. So for him, I mean, he goes on about, yeah, you think you're great, but you've not won the Africa Cup of Nations. Duh. Let's have another honest conversation. Does he believe he's a great player? I, for one, I do not think he was a great player by Yemi Karagu. No one beats. I do not believe so. But let's look at some of the great English players that there has been. Wayne Rooney at Manchester United. Frank Lampard at Chelsea. Even has scored more goals than Mo Salah so far scored, no matter how good he's been. Look at Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, Sol Campbell, Steven George Gerrard, who they go on raving about, and Captain Fantastic. He was so Liverpool in and out just because he decided to dedicate his entire career to Liverpool. And kudos to him, well deserved. Because he chose to stay even when there was demand for him from other teams. I'm sure Chelsea were interested at some point, Real Madrid were interested, and he chose to stay. That's okay. Give him his flowers for being loyal to the team. Somebody tried to paint the picture that Steven Gerrard has a better Premier League legacy than Mo Salah. I wouldn't believe that on any given day. I understand that Liverpool fans are more endeared to Steven Gerrard than they would be to Mohamed Salah, because Steven Gerrard is a local boy who played for the club his entire life, captained it, inspired them to the triumph of the UEFA Champions League title in 2005. And that's it. Maybe, I think along the way, they picked up a couple of cups here and there, but that was it. Never won the Premier League. Like I told you, only 2 seasons he did come close. 2008, 2009, 2013, 2014. And even in 2014, he was culprit for them losing that title. He was the villain almost. Should we sit and paint him in the mold of a villain for seeing Liverpool miss out on the Premier League title that season? For getting Brandon Rodgers sacked? Should we have that line of school of debate? No, because we do not want to bastardize the debate. Then, the reason that's why I cite the examples of Frank Lampard, Wayne Rooney, Rio Ferdinand, they were all great players. Premier League, their legacy is quite up there. But when they went to the national team, what did they win with England? Tell me, remind me. I stand to be corrected. I don't even remember them making it to any final. Whether it was at the 2010 World Cup, they got knocked out by Germany. Embarrassingly so, they got beat terribly by them. At the 2006 World Cup, Portugal knocked them out at the quarterfinals. At the 2014 World Cup, what did they do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I use that intentionally because Ugandans love to use that. But absolutely nothing. Go back to 2002. They still had a great team. What did they do? They got knocked out by Brazil. A very, very great Brazil side. So, should we sit here and say that they were not great players just because they ended up not winning anything with their countries? Harry Kane doesn't know and is one of the best English players there's been in the last 10 years or so. Does he have any medal with the England national team? Shame on you, Jamie Carragher. Shame on you. So, for you to try and paint Mo Salah as lesser of a player than he is, because he's not won anything with Egypt so far. I know certainly there you mentioned that Egypt is a great country. They're the most successful in AFCON, but Mo Salah has not won it with them. That's true. He's not won it with them yet. May not even win it with them. Look at Didier Drogba. I do not think the reputation of Didier Drogba at Chelsea is at any one time in question in the eyes of Chelsea fans, nor has it ever been in question in the eyes of the Ivory Coast fans. But did he win the AFCON with Ivory Coast? Sadly not. It's after he had stepped down from national team football that they won it in 2015, and then they did it in the last edition. Does that mean he's not a great player? I do not want to believe so. You see, sometimes, yes, trophies are the ultimate success of a collective, of a team, and nations. But you do not stop being a great player if you do not win some of those. Some of the players that never won the Ballon d'Or but really deserved it, one of them was Thierry Henry. So should we say he's not among the greatest of talents that we've seen just because he did not win the Ballon d'Or? He did win the World Cup. I don't know if Yemi Carragher knows what the World Cup is, but he did win the World Cup in '98 and reached the finals in 2006, in spite of their misfortunes in 2002. So, dear Jamie Carragher, this is a simple open letter. It is okay not to be fond of Mo Salah. That's okay. It's okay to have a difference of opinion from what we have of Mo Salah in the context of the interview that he gave. It's okay. But to sit there for 8 minutes and literally almost attack the player, and I say that particularly because in his submission, he does make statements that Mo Salah made it about himself and he's trying to get the manager sacked. He said, and I quote, it was a disgrace what Salah did. When he stops in the mix zone, it's choreographed with agent to cause maximum damage and strength on his position. He chose this weekend, he chose this time to go for the manager and to get him sacked. I said this last night and I'll repeat it. If Liverpool want to sack their manager, it won't be on account of Mo Salah. Managers do not get sacked because a player came out and spoke in the media. Managers will get sacked for many reasons, often being poor results. And unfortunately for Arne Slot, he's not had the results. Speaking of the results, I'm not one of those that believe they're going to beat up against Inter Milan tonight. I'm not saying they can't beat up against them. On paper, they have a team that is capable and worthy of beating up against Inter Milan. But their exploits so far this season do not convince us that that is going to be the case tonight. Inter Milan is one of those hard teams, those teams that are really, really hard to break down. Of course, they did lose their last Champions League outing when they got beat by Atletico de Madrid by 2-1, conceding late on in that game through Jose Mario Gimenez scoring the winner. So, for Jamie Carragher to insinuate, to suggest that Mo Salah went after the manager and tried to get him sacked, absolutely nonsensical. Absolutely nonsensical. Are you trying to say that the Liverpool hierarchy, Richard Hughes, a sporting director, among other decision makers within the FSG group, are that naive? Or that Mohamed Salah holds so much sway in terms of power that he can cause that? Unless you're saying the top brass are dimwits and that they are in over their heads, they do not know what the hell they are doing. I do not want to believe that's the case. So, Jamie Carragher, like I said, we can have a difference of opinion. You're well within your right to disagree with the views or how Mo Salah handled the whole situation. That's your prerogative. But don't go on attacking the player. Don't make it personal. It's not personal. Because the way he went on in those 8 minutes, it's like he had waited for this moment. It's like the day had finally come for him to get something off of his chest. And that there was never going to be a more perfect opportunity presenting itself. He just went on and on and on. We're talking about a player who, according to a clip by Sky Sports, spat towards children because they were trying to have a bit of banter with him. I think it was aftermath of a loss, and he spat at them through the window of his car. When you look at Jamie Carragher, again, I think it was Gary Neville who said that Jamie Carragher knows everything about the other teams when they are not winning the Premier League or trophies, or when results are not going their way, but he doesn't know a single thing about what's going inside Liverpool when they're having a bad spell. Coincidence? Anyways, we'll leave that at that. But I do not think Jamie Carragher will have half or even quarter a legacy that Salah has in a Liverpool jersey. But anyways, so my expectation is for Inter Milan to win this game by 2-1. By the way, the last time these two sides met, that was in 2022. Inter Milan beat up against Liverpool by 1-0. In the same 2021-2022 season, there was a 2-0 victory for Liverpool against Inter Milan. That was away from home. You remember Liverpool advanced to the final because this was at the semi-finals where they met Real Madrid. The other meeting, you have to go back in 2008, when Liverpool beat up against Inter Milan by 2-0 and 1-0 home and away. So it's a fixture that Liverpool have dominated historically. They've won it 3 times. There's not been a single draw. Really, Inter Milan have won it only once. So, however, at best, we're talking about an Inter Milan side that is right up there on the Italian Serie A table. They're the good team. They beat up against Como over the weekend by 4-0, you know. And I think they can get a result against Liverpool. In any case, if you're Inter Milan and you're aspiring to sort of have the kind of run in on the UEFA Champions League like you had the previous campaign, then I do not think that failing to beat up against Liverpool does you any favors or sends that signal. So Liverpool are a very good team. That they are having a bad spell. So this is a time and opportunity for Inter Milan to capitalize on that. In terms of what we expect team setups to look like, we do expect Alson Ramsey-Becker in goal, Ibrahim Konate alongside Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez at right back, and Andy Robertson at left back. Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch with Dominic Soboslai, Flan Witz, and Riongo Moha, as well as Hugo Ekitike, possibly to start in that shape. The fixture does come too early for Cody Gakpo, who suffered a knock. Jeremy Frimpong still suffers a muscular injury, while Giovanni Rioni is continuing to recover from an anterior cruciate ligament injury. Like we've told you, Mo Salah is out of the squad. Stefan Bajcetic will be absent. Alexander Isak will be available, so do not be surprised if Isaka is at the tip of the attack, with Hugo Ekitike possibly being played to the left wing. So that is a possibility as well. On the side of Inter Milan, they are also missing a couple of players, the likes of Manela Kanji, Thomas Palacios, Matteo Damian, Rafael Di Gennaro, as well as Denzel Dumfries, who has an ankle injury. Nonetheless, expect to see Jan Sommer in goal, Francesco Acerbi, Alessandro Bastoni, and Stefan De Vrij are there in the back three. Expect to see Carlos Augusto, Pietro Zerinski, Nico Barrera, Hakani Chanalolu, and Federico Di Marco, with Angie Boni as well as Marcus Thuram there. Again, do not be surprised if Christian Chivu makes room for Lautaro Martinez, But that should be some of the expectations that you have going into that game. So my prediction is that Inter Milan win this game by 2-1. Liverpool are just vulnerable to conceding. And yet Inter Milan is one of the sides that are really, really good when it comes to defending. I think until the Atletico de Madrid game, Inter Milan had only conceded one goal in the UEFA Champions League. Let's see. Pedri has a couple of predictions for us. He says Real Madrid 1, Manchester City 3. In other words, he wants to see Xabi Alonso get sacked. He says Inter Milan 2, Liverpool 1. He says Barcelona 5, Eintracht Frankfurt 0. There. In other words, Frankfurt won't have a sniff at the Barcelona goal. I'm not sure Barcelona are that good at defending. I'm not sure Barcelona are that good at defending. But speaking of Barcelona against Eintracht Frankfurt, I think it's a game that they can win by, I'll say 4-1 in favor of Barcelona. Tottenham, Slavia Praha, I'm going to go Spurs to win 2-0. Then PSV versus Atletico de Madrid. I'm going to go Atletico de Madrid 2-1. I know PSV are in good spirits and all that. Olympique Marseille, I'm forcing them to win up against Union Saint-Gilloise. They lost 6-0 to Leipzig. Yeah, they did. It happens. You're saying Atletico de Madrid 2, 1 PSV. Chelsea, Atalanta, I'm going to go for, Chelsea have not been good in recent times, despite their last Champions League outing being a 3-0 victory over Barcelona. I'm going to go Chelsea 2-0. Bayern Munich Sporting CP, I'm going to go Bayern 5, 1 Sporting CP. That's my prediction. Atalanta, Chelsea, Pedro says 2-2. Bayern Munich Sporting CP, what's your prediction for that one? You're saying Bayern 3, Sporting 0. Okay, I've gone for 5-1 in favor of Bayern Munich. They just score loads of goals. They're that big a threat. They are that big a threat. Okay. Maybe briefly, on the standings of the UEFA Champions League table. Now, the reason as to why I fancy, Atletico de Madrid is not just because they are above, PSV with the point. It's in the context of what it means to their progression to the next round. You say Monaco, Galatasaray. Monaco are very unconvincing, really. I'm going to go to one. Galatasaray winning. Oh, you had the similar prediction. Okay, good to know. But then, Real Madrid, if they lose to Manchester City, it won't be the end of the road for them in the UEFA Champions League. It's still far from that. In any case, they have 12 points. They've only lost one out of the 5 games they played. Excuse me. Really winning all the other 4. It's a difficult moment for Xabi Alonso, but he needs to find a way. Napoli, they'll be up against Benfica, but that game will come on Wednesday. Benfica are no better. But I wouldn't be surprised if Benfica surprisingly get the better of Napoli. But let's just wait and see. So those are my predictions for that, for those games. And let me see if there's any other game that we can pick on. Because when it comes to Bayern Munich, until they lost to Arsenal, they had been perfect. They don't concede too many goals. They've only conceded 6. They've scored 15. Of course, PSG is the highest scoring team in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned, with 19. Dortmund come next with 17. Bayern 15. I'm trying to see. Barcelona have scored 10. If Barcelona win, that takes them to 10 points. Still doesn't push them into the top 8, but you never know. I don't know. Barcelona look like they're bound to play in the playoffs. Pedri says, did you hear that Liverpool want Xabi Alonso as manager if he is sacked from Real Madrid slot as well? Now, we know it's a public secret that among their highest of considerations was Xabi Alonso as a replacement for Jurgen Klopp. But eventually those conversations did not yield fruit. Xabi Alonso decided to wait for Real Madrid and he had it his way. But it's not too remote to think that Liverpool would take on Xabi Alonso. However, I do not know whether they will be doing it halfway the season or because Liverpool just do not wake up and sack managers. It doesn't happen very often, by the way. Like I said, the last time it did happen was when they let go of Brandon Rodgers. That was around October 2015. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It's impossible to happen for them to sack a manager. It can happen, but again, I do not think that you sack Anna Slot and immediately you're opening the door for Xabi Alonso as soon as he's been sacked. Really. But yeah, it's a consideration that they really, really had because FSG tried to pitch in the project and they just couldn't land him. We're talking about a former Liverpool player. Even though he's played for Real Madrid, played for Bayern Munich, deep down at his heart, I'd want to think that he still holds Liverpool, a club very quite dear to him. You said, take this from me, but if Real Madrid keep Alonso for next year, he will be one of the best next year. If Alonso comes to Liverpool now, he's going to be very successful, both short and long term. Again, I do not personally think that I have anything bad to say about Xabi Alonso. Because even for the best of managers, they have bad spells in terms of results. What he's gone through over the last 5-6 games is that, for example, in the Spanish La Liga, they've won only 1 out of the last 5. They've drawn 3 and lost the other, losing to Celta Vigo, beating up against Athletic Bilbao, doing against teams like Vallecano, Elche, things like that. And in the UEFA Champions League, they were not too convincing in their 4-3 victory against Olympiacos. So the results in recent times have not spelled out a good turn. and also the rumors we keep hearing from different media outlets in regards to the state of the dressing room, with some senior players not being at par with him, or perhaps having a bit of a sort of the kind of relationship that you would describe as walking on eggshells, is not relieving, to say the least. But I do not know. I, for one, would stick with Xabi Alonso for now at Real Madrid. I'd stick with him. Again, even though Barcelona are broken away in terms, they are 4 points ahead of Real Madrid. Again, that's not too many points to catch up on. It's not like Barcelona are not going to drop points at any one point for the remainder of the season. In any case, there's still an El Clasico to play, for the return leg. So there's still an opportunity. It's not doomsday for Real Madrid. It's not like we suddenly at that point that it's gone too bad that they need to make a managerial change. We know for a fact that the Florentino Perez met with the Real Madrid board yesterday to have discussions about the state of the club in the aftermath of that 2-0 loss to Celta Vigo. But I would want to think that I do not think losing to Man City should be the last roll of the dice. He's without criticism. He isn't without criticism in terms of his tactics. I was reading, in the view of some people, the way he uses Jude Bellingham, they think it doesn't get the best out of him. His love for Adagula, I think, is out there for the world to see, maybe with good reason. But again, all managers, wherever you'll go, they always have that one player or those few players that they trust. Whether results are good, whether results are bad, they'll just have that set of players that they really, really trust, that they really, really rely on, that they really look onto, to say, you're the guys that I trust. You remember Jose Mourinho moving around with Nemanja Matic. He trusted him. He loved the guy. He trusted players like Michael Essien. He trusted players like Didier Drogba, in that even when he returned to Chelsea, he brought him back. I think, so things like that, those things happen. You see, apparently, according to Marca and various news channels in Spain, if Real Madrid loses to Manchester City tomorrow, Xabi Alonso will be sacked as soon as the final whistle is blown. Florentino Perez is not patient anymore. Yeah, I read that, I think, via the Madrid Zone, quoting Marca, and Marca is one of the trusted sources when it comes to reporting on Real Madrid. Again, yeah, Florentino Perez is capable of doing that. He's not a very patient businessman. But like I said, between you and I think we can agree that on footballing terms, it would be a little premature for them to wake up and sack Xabi Alonso. But then the big question also becomes, you sack Xabi Alonso and then who takes over the reins at Real Madrid that is going to give you the bounce of results and perhaps the kind of title chase that you want, not just in the Spanish La Liga, but also at the UEFA Champions League front, So that's a huge question. There's some wishful sections of the Real Madrid fans segment or section that believe Zinedine Zidane should be brought back for a third spell to steer them through the remainder of the season. I do not know whether he would be open to that. We know that sometimes people have left Real Madrid with a bit of a sour tongue, in the manner in which they could have been treated in and around the club by senior officials, and particularly you have to go back to Raul Gonzalez, you have to go back to Cristiano Ronaldo, Iker Casillas. It's not to say they no longer love Real Madrid, but the manner in which Real Madrid part ways with some of those senior players and legendary figures in the history of the club did not leave a good taste in some of their tongues. So I do not think for Zinedine Zidane, the case is too much different, But yeah, we just have to wait and see whether that's the case. Because Manchester City are a team very, very capable of beating up against Real Madrid at this point. Injuries have not helped. Alexander Trent-Arnold is out. Eder Militao is out. Rudiger's been in and out of the team. The other time it was Dean Howson who had an injury. You know, they've had it really rough. And we know that Real Madrid midfield is not the best. It's not the best, to say the least. So really, we'll just have to wait and see how everything does pan out in the wake of Real Madrid. But I, for one, I think sacking Xabi Alonso just because they lose to Man City, if that were to be the case, would feel like a premature decision, feel like a misguided decision. Of course, the ends justify the means. If they sack Xabi Alonso and whoever comes in next gets the job done and does wonders, then the ends will justify the means. But for me, I would stick with Xabi Alonso. It's very funny that those who wanted Ancelotti out last year want him back. I've also had those rumors and that sort of speculation that apparently, you know, Carlo Ancelotti is a manager capable of getting the best out of this team. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the guy that you literally threw under the bus. Last I checked here, he still had a valid contract with Real Madrid. It's not like he ran down his contract and they part ways. No. So, again, that's the nature of football, unfortunately. We fans get to be I don't know, how do I put it? When A is happening, we want it to be B. When B is happening, we want to be A, because B is not performing as we thought they were going to perform, and possibly A was better, and things like that. So, yeah. I've also had the rumors with Carlo Ancelotti as is with Zidane. I've not had many other names that have come out again to say that would be the replacements. But let's just wait and see. But for me, I would say give Xabi Alonso time. Give him time. Let him build his team. Let him keep working on it, and see where it goes. You know, you're one of the best YouTubers. You are my favorite. Keep the great work up, and you're gonna do great things. Thank you so much for the kind words, Pedri. So yeah, and allow me end it on that very note. So thank you so much, Pedri, for being part of this morning's conversation. You've been such a wonderful audience. For those of you that liked the podcast, those that did not like, those that I couldn't submit in a comment, thank you so much for your predictions, Pedri, and your other comments. It's always a pleasure to interact with you, even when we disagree on certain views or certain topics. You keep it professional, and you sort of keep up the debate. So I want to give you your flowers in that respect. Otherwise, it's always a pleasure interacting with you. Our new subscribers, we say welcome to the community. Keep watching our content, keep commenting, keep sharing it. Like I told you guys, the objective is to achieve those 4,000 hours of watch time, and we get to monetize this channel. As part of the goals, from now on, we've hit certain marks that we want to move on to the next. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Let's enjoy the UEFA Champions League when it comes around. I hope I won't be disappointed with my sources in regards to access to those games, because yesterday was really, really hard done by for the Man United game. That's why we could not do the watch along as I had earlier promised. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.